It is Tuesday, October 25th, and the Give and Go show is back in your life. My name is Griffin Queen, and as always, I'm joined by Matt Ferentinos and Matt Modi.
What up?
Good to see you, Matt.
Good to see
Oh,
you.
Which
yeah,
one? Yeah, which
yeah.
Matt are we talking
Both
about?
of you, both of you. As always, like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm not going to use your first names, even though I just did. We're going to refer to you as Ferentinos and Modi the entire time. And on that same note, a little bit before we get into it, you guys know this. My Twitter followers know this. Today, an episode came out with the Believe in Wizards podcast, hosted by Matt Moderno, another basketball Matt in my life.
Matt Supremacy.
An
Let's
MM.
go.
Yeah, another MM. So
Yeah.
we've got the MF, the motherfucker, and then we've got the MMs. That podcast came out today. I don't know if you guys have gotten a chance to listen to it yet, but while we're on the topic of Matts, I just want to tell anybody who's watching this pod right now, go follow at Matt Moderno on Twitter at MATTMODDERNO. And then also follow the Believe in Wizards podcast. Believe is spelled BLEAV. In Wizards, those are both spelled normally. Just to give a really brief rundown of what we talked about Kyle Kuzma for a long time. We talked about Bradley Beal for a long time. We talked about the Wizards rotations and kind of what we can expect from the Wizards defensively and culture-wise this year. Talked a little bit about Wes Unseld Jr., talked a little bit about Russell Westbrook and the Lakers. We had some draft profiles that we went through for a couple college guys. So just, a fun podcast. I really appreciated the opportunity to go chop it up with Matt yesterday, and seem to be getting good feedback on the episode so far. So if you're watching this and you want some more basketball content, go listen to that, because I think it was a pretty good episode.
I can't say I've listened to it yet. It was going to be on when I go for my post-work walk. It was going to be on the rotation.
Sure.
Just haven't gotten around to it yet.
Yeah, well, I don't think we talked about any Sixers players, so
That's honestly,
it might not be worth your time. I honestly can't say.
No, at this point, like the less Sixers I hear, the better. It's like I need to get away from I need to when I go for a walk, it's like just to erase the mind from work. And then also erase the mind from thinking about the Sixers. It's both.
It's rough when a new Zach Lowe or just another podcast comes out and it's like they talk about the Nets and they're not playing well. It's like, well, I don't really want to listen to this part. I just know it's going to be brutal, and I just have to relive everything that I've been thinking about. How
two teams that Zach Lowe talks about a ton as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's definitely got a little bit of an East Coast bias. Growing up, I'm pretty sure he grew up a Celtics fan. Although he's one of the few.
Zach Lowe.
Or is he a Sixers fan?
No, I know his favorite team growing up was the Mets. He talks about that all the time. He doesn't mention his favorite basketball team growing up.
So I think it was the Celtics.
Of course. I mean, the whole Bill Simmons.
It's that northeastern media market. Although I will say Zach Lowe, and there's a couple guys. If it is the Celtics or it is the Knicks or it is, the Nets or whoever it may be, he hides it better than the vast majority of people. Because again, we don't know who his favorite team is. I don't know, which means he's doing a really good job of hiding it.
I feel like he's like Rob Lowe in that he would wear an NBA hat. He just supports the league.
Are you saying that because both their names are Lowe, or
no,
just because he supports the Shield?
Yeah, it's supporting the Shield, supporting the brand.
Was that an NFL game or an MLB game?
It was an NFL game.
You literally had the NFL logo.
Yeah, I guess Rob Lowe wouldn't do that for the MLB because he's a straight up Dodgers fan. He would absolutely just wear a Dodgers hat.
Is he? Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I think he's a season ticket holder. Him and his sons. Julia could tell you about this because she's obsessed with Rob Lowe and his family. He's at every Dodgers game. He's at all the playoff games. He's their Jack Nicholson.
Poor guy.
I had something. Oh, I was gonna say, you guys don't enjoy when you guys are losing and Zach Lowe talks about your teams, but my team is a perennial loser. So when we're winning and Zach Lowe talks about us, I end up being very unhappy about it because it feels a little bit like a curse. It's once the national media starts to notice the Wizards
they start to suck.
They start to be awful. Once people pay attention and we're no longer underrated, we immediately become overrated and then we lose a bunch of games.
Yeah, there is that when you're not expecting to be good and you have that underdog mentality and that your team is good, you're just waiting for people to catch up, and then it's no, I told you they have been playing well. It's the first game on TNT, they just get blown out. It's no, I swear they have been doing well. But I feel like that's just being a Wizards fan the past 10 years.
10 years? I mean, I've been alive for 30 and I've been watching them for 24 of that. It's been 24 of those years. And
some of those years they're actually good.
The last time they won a title was, I think, 44 years ago. So I imagine it's been 44 years of that. Although I think they had a couple good years right after winning the title where they just didn't make it all the way. But even still, we'll say a soft 40 on number of years where it's been unhappy being a Wizards fan.
Well, some of those years were pretty good. Like the Gilbert Arenas years were fun.
I love those years.
Yeah.
Agent Zero.
Yeah.
Guys,
turning around, throwing the hands up for the half court threes that he would just fire up. It's great stuff.
What are we talking about when we say they're? I'm like, I am somebody that believes that the journey
losing
is
to the Cavs and LeBron
in the first round. In the first round, we made it one round into the playoffs when people were like, "Oh yeah, this is a genuine contender," and then the crab dribble, and then the free throw
Cron
line.
Butler, Antoine Walker.
What did they accomplish? 45 wins. Guys, 45 wins is not a good season. It is barely the average.
It's better than like the past 4 years.
That's true. But again, if the highest bar in my life is 49 wins, and it is, that is the highest we have achieved in my life. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, that's not great. That's not great.
You can't even be a 50-win team. The Spurs did it for 2 decades straight. Like, come on.
Yeah,
I don't want to get wrapped up in Wizards.
They look really good this year too.
We are going to talk about the Spurs. I am going to bring up the Spurs.
I wish I was hammering that over.
Yeah, I am going to bring up the Spurs a little bit later. I'm going to bring up a couple teams that I'm pretty surprised by, both up and down. Before we get into that, though, anything you guys want to jump into this week before we get to basketball talk? I know, Ferentinos, you mentioned you want to do a little bit of anime talk. Modai, you bring anything to the table, or are you taking this week off on weird topics?
Nothing nerd related for me. Just go Phillies. That's all I got to say. Go Phillies.
Look, Bryce Harper, maybe the most locked in I've ever seen a postseason player. He's got some big poppy energy right now.
Yeah. Although I am curious because one of my friends was visiting this weekend, who's a huge Nats fan, who like the first year, like despised Bryce Harper, aggressively booed him. Nats won a World Series. He nothing's Bryce Harper now. No resentment, no ill will. So I'm curious your thoughts as a Nats fan towards Bryce Harper, both the first year pre-World Series and then now.
Bryce Harper's my favorite player in baseball.
Really?
Bryce Harper could play for the Phillies, the Mets, the Braves, and the Marlins at the same time, and he would still be my favorite player in baseball. Before Bryce, it was Ichiro. After Ichiro, it's been Bryce for, I mean, even a little bit towards the tail end of Ichiro as he was getting older. It's been Bryce since the day he was drafted.
Even when he left, like you didn't like that first year, he was still.
I told everybody that I hope Bryce spends the next 13 years winning MVP every single year, hitting 60 homers, making his way into the Hall of Fame as a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Ooh.
And I hope the Phillies lose every single game that he plays in.
He wore a Vegas Knights jersey against the Caps, man.
He's from Vegas.
Yeah.
Gotta support the DC teams. That was terrible.
Look, I understand being irritated with that, and I was irritated with it when it happened, but it was also the first pro team. Ferentinos, the audio of you sucking on that is awful.
Sorry, yeah, that'll be the last time I do it. I really wanted to get that last bit of coffee.
It's okay. People that drink coffee with a straw, I don't trust. Julie does it too. But
what about iced coffee?
Iced coffee's fine. Is that iced coffee? Ferentinos?
I'm muted this time.
I appreciate that. Are you drinking iced coffee or hot coffee?
Drinking iced coffee.
Oh, okay.
Those
that's fine.
La Colombe things.
Oh, those are good. Those are solid.
Put some ice, put some creamer in it. Fantastic.
Julia drinks hot coffee with a straw.
That's psychopath.
It's literally like dangerous.
Drinking anything hot through a straw is psychotic behavior.
It's psychotic behavior, which explains why she's in a relationship with me. No, to the Bryce Harper point. I will root for Bryce until the day he retires, and then I'm sure I will root for him after that if he becomes a hitting coach somewhere. Although he's going to have made like $400 million in his career by then, so he probably won't.
He's not going to want to grind.
Yeah, he's probably going to like start an MLB team in Vegas.
Probably an analyst. I could see that.
Yeah,
he loves the game.
He loves the. Oh yeah, a guy like him is so good for the game, and that's always been my perspective on it. It was like. It broke my heart when he left, but I blame the learners and I blame the Nats organization way more than I blame Bryce Harper, because straight up, like if I was not from the DC area, I would make the exact same choice. Like $30 million, particularly $30 million that is not deferred for 40 years, is a significant amount of money. I don't care how many hundreds of millions you make. You're not leaving $30 million on the table just to make it so that billionaires can protect a little bit more of their own assets. I don't bear him any ill will. The first game back in DC, though, I had tickets to. Ferentinos might have been with me.
I was at that game as well.
That's the worst night of my life.
When he just smashed a
Lit
tater.
us up,
He smashed a home run probably 15 yards away from me.
Oh.
And it was after the Nats just had an awful performance. It was cold. It was rainy. I was already having a bad night. It was crushing what he did to us that night. And then, where that team went afterwards, sure, it made up for it. But it was like he was stomping on my heart. And Ferentinos knows this. Modi, you might know this. I named my dog Harper that I had gotten when he was still on the team.
I did not know that.
I no longer have Harper. My previous significant other and I, we broke up and she kept the dog. So, and they were like fairly close to each other in time period, with my dog leaving me and then Bryce Harper, the baseball player, leaving me. So there was a lot of like extra angst kind of in there. But,
Reasonable.
You may have seen my Instagram story a couple of days, me holding my dog Harp. And I was like, you're going to the World Series. Like, I'm happy for her. And I guess her mom, who's not a Phillies fan. But, look, I hope she has the best week ever. And I hope they beat the Astros because I hate the Astros.
Yeah. Fuck the Astros.
Fuck the Stros.
Yeah. I do have a buddy here who's a big Stros fan, though. And I hope he doesn't watch this episode because he's a really good guy. And I want him to be happy. But I hate his baseball team.
If not fuck the Stros, fuck Ted Cruz. So like fuck the Stros.
That's true. That's true. Fuck Ted Cruz. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's funny you guys mentioned like Bryce wearing a Vegas Knights jersey. Jalen Hurts is like from Houston, so he wore a Houston Astros hat to his press conference. But nobody cared because everybody loves him.
I mean, there's players you see.
You're 6-0, it's fine.
Yeah, that's also true.
You see it in all these sports. Like a lot of guys that didn't grow up in Texas wear Cowboys stuff, even if they're playing in a team that has a rivalry with the Cowboys.
LeBron's a Cowboy.
LeBron, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to talk about LeBron's sports fandom. Like,
I mean,
he's
it's
like
their
the
job
epitome
too.
of Twitter sports fandom. Like,
yeah, like it's. I don't know if he was a Yankees fan. I think at one point he was, and now he would call himself an Indians fan. Maybe he'd call himself a Dodgers fan now.
Yeah, probably Dodgers.
Know. I think LeBron's a fan of whoever's best for his brand.
Which
I imagine. I think about this sometimes. Like once you are a professional athlete, particularly in your own sport, do you stop being a fan of the team that you grew up on if you don't play for them? Like if you're Kevin Durant and you grew up a Wizards fan and you spend your career doing whatever you're doing and then you retire, after you retire, do you become a Wizards fan again? Or do you just like not give a fuck at that point?
I feel like you can go first.
Well, this is not a great sample size, but just from what I've seen, it seems like when professional athletes retire, they remain fans of the teams that they played for. What it's because I feel like when you grow up, when you're like that good at a sport, I feel like you lose your fandom towards that specific sport at some point when you're like in high school and you're like going to go, like, you're good enough.
When you can play that sport professionally, I feel like
I'd imagine you grow up and you look at Wizards players. Kevin Durant at 16 is probably like, I would have dropped buckets on these teams.
Yeah, like
I would have been the best player on this team.
Yeah.
No, I idolize these freaking factory workers that I could put up, 35 against any night.
Wow.
Yeah.
Will Chamberlain.
It's not exactly
energy there.
Not exactly the same, but you hear that from reporters too. Like they grow up covering a team and then they get a job, they grow up being a fan of the team. Then they get a job covering the team and they lose their fandom.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense because once you see kind of how the sausage is made, I imagine it kind of ruins a lot of the like fandom aspect of it for you.
Oh, these players care like 10% compared to what the fans care.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's a job.
It is.
At that point, it's a job. It's your career.
And
no matter what, there's always that little like that special extra when it's like your team though. Like no matter what, like I feel like as like for NBA for example, like I just love basketball more than anything. So I definitely am more of a fan of a few teams. The Nets are my team, but I like a bunch of other teams. But like still if the Nets or if the Cowboys win, like there's just that little bit of extra. I feel like with pro athletes too, like obviously it's their life, they impact it too. I feel like they look at it from a different angle that we do, but like I'm sure they're still happy for the teams that they grew up being a fan of as a kid. No matter what.
Here's a question for you on that topic before we move on to the next one. Russell Westbrook. You know, I hate to bring him up so early
How
in the
did we
episode.
get? I'm curious.
Lifelong Lakers fan.
Oh,
Lifelong. Do you
Oh.
think when this season ends, and I mean, like, let's ignore whatever happens this season, whether he's good, whether he's bad, whatever. Do you think Russell Westbrook wakes up next season or wakes up when he retires and ever roots for the Los Angeles Lakers again? Is he going to be able to get that back, or is he Clippers faithful or Thunder faithful or whatever it may be going forward?
I think once enough time, like once the organization's removed, LeBron's retired, like there's nothing
Beanie
resembling.
Boss is dead.
Yeah, literally. Once there's nothing left resembling this current iteration of the Lakers, I feel like he'll probably won't not like be like as obviously as big of a fan, but probably have some sort of soft spot, I would imagine.
Yeah. And I use Russ as an example just because the lows are really low, but also because you hear so much about fandom specifically for guys that were fans of the Lakers growing up. Because, like, let's be honest, there's not that many guys in the NBA that were fans of the Celtics growing up because of the racial demographics of who a lot of Celtics fans are. Not that many guys that grow up being Utah Jazz fans. Not that many guys that grow up because of how early of a team they are of the Thunder. So the Lakers are one that you hear every single time somebody's in trade discussions because Southern California has, 15 million people in it. And there's a lot of basketball players that come out of here. And Russ is just kind of a good example.
Also Hollywood. There's
yeah.
Well, our demographic grew up watching Kobe, who's like impossible not to love. Like even people that didn't grow up in LA, like Embiid was like a diehard Lakers fan growing up.
Sure. Which I guess is another point. Russell Westbrook, we talk about him like he's this like superhero and like he's like this grown ass man. He's like 3 years older than us. Like he is our like peer age wise. Like we grew up watching the same shit as him, which is very weird to contextualize now that we're no longer like teenagers watching sports.
Yeah, it's you like different age. It's like when you're in college, you're like, well, wow, these freshmen are the same age as me. And then you like in your mid 20s, you're like, oh, like I'm like these professional athletes in their prime are the same age as me. And now it's like, well, I'm now a washed up age of like a running back would be a miracle if they played till my
I'm getting my last contract.
Yeah, guys our age now are like, look, we're gonna keep the 3-point shooting up, but please don't have us run all over the court.
Yeah.
These knees, they hurt, baby.
6 man of the year territory.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Ferentinos, you said you wanted to jump into some anime talk for a sec before we
I mean, I've just been keeping up with Chainsaw Man and Bleach, and they're both awesome still.
How far in did you you started Bleach, the OG
so I'm like
show.
5 episodes in of the OG,
Okay.
and then I've kept up with all 3 of the current of the new one. And
Interesting way to go about that.
That is
Yes.
very confusing. Have you seen the OG stuff before?
No.
That's an insane thing to do.
Yeah, I don't understand.
That's like reading a Sorcerer's Stone and like what's the
Deathly
last one?
Hallows.
Like you're watching
Deathly Hallows at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because I guess it's just knowing more background about the characters, like because obviously you have like the whole crew introduced to you in the new Bleach, which was what I saw, and then I saw like you don't get into like the 2nd or 3rd episode seeing the kids from his class turned into what becomes like the crew with what is it, Ichigo or Ichigo? Yeah.
Ichigo.
He's
Kurosaki.
the main one, yeah.
Yeah. And
Ichigo, Orihime, Chad, and Rukia.
Yep. So just like seeing like, oh, like these are already the crew, and then like watching the beginning, and then you're like, oh, like this random kid in class is gonna end up becoming his like right-hand man, and just like
which is why the way you're doing it is very weird.
It's very wrong.
Because I guess we know where this goes.
I know, but there's
right,
so the peripheral on Amazon, I know it might be on your, if you guys watch a Fire Stick, it's probably everywhere, but highly recommend it. I forgot the actress's name, but it's the girl from Kick-Ass.
Yeah, Chloe Grace Moretz.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I watched the first episode. I am hooked. Waiting for Carly to get back to watch the second one. It's really good.
I heard good things.
On Prime.
They're raving about
Prime.
it. Yeah.
I would avoid eating during it. There's some squeamish scenes.
A little bit of body horror.
Little bit of that. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Maybe I'm just more of a squeamish person. I never really liked the Saw movies, but
Oh, the first 2 are phenomenal.
Yeah, I don't remember liking the second one. I don't actually know if I saw the second one, but the first one is an all-time horror movie, but I would not eat during it. Like that's a good take. There are certain episodes of Rick and Morty that I don't eat during.
I've never watched Rick and Morty.
You should. And I don't want Ferentinos to start quoting any of it because he will do what he did to the rest of our friend group and ruin it for you.
And ruin it.
But it's a good show, particularly, if you are awake at 2 a.m. and your brain starts to get weird.
Just mushy brain TV show.
It's a good show for that time of day.
Kept
Okay.
Cartoon Network afloat for years.
Is that Cartoon Network? Oh yeah, I guess it's Adult Swim.
Adult Swim.
Adult Swim.
You're right. All right, let's move over to NBA talk. Let's talk about why we have this podcast.
At least this episode started with NBA, and then we got some nerd talk. So at least the people that would normally leave within the first 10 minutes at least got some NBA stuff.
That's true. I feel like we kind of do that. Like we're usually like, let's talk about something because we're excited, and then we're like, but let's also be nerds before we talk about why we're here.
Inherently, we're all nerds.
Yeah. Okay. Big things that we wanted to talk about this week. Honestly, we had talked about doing this last week when it was just game one. Didn't really make sense because not everybody had played in the first couple days. So rather than doing game one overreactions, I want to do week one overreactions. I think each of us has a couple different overreactions based on, I think the most games anybody has played is 4, and the least would probably be 2. Although I think most people have played 3 at this point.
I know the Bucks, I think, have only played 2.
Yeah, the Bucks started their season on Thursday last week, so they're a little bit behind everybody. But for the most part, everybody's played 3 or 4 games. So overreactions, Ferentinos, let's start with you. Any overreactions that we were talking about one at least a little bit before the pod started, but I want to leave it to you.
Initials of BS.
I'll start with my non-Nets one. But I'll say one of my overreactions is that I think both the Cavs and the Jazz will finish in the top 3 in both the East and the West. And there's
top 3?
Top 3?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Ferentinos,
yeah.
Look, you did the assignment, man. That's an overreaction.
There is no way Danny H is going to let that happen. He will trade the entire team before that happens.
They just continue to play good basketball. I mean, if you look at
yeah, what are the odds that a team based in Utah would have fundamentals and good basketball?
They just keep
Chris
doing
bounce
it.
passes.
Yeah.
They look good. Mike Conley still is playing really well. Lauri Markkanen is playing lights out. I saw a funny comment that, what's better than having one Jordan Clarkson, 2 with Karis LeVert there? It's just working. They're still shooting threes better than any other team. They're playing really good defense. And I could just see them continuing to win. And the West is stacked, I know, which is why that's kind of a wild take. But I just think the Jazz, and they've been doing it against good teams. It's not like they've been doing it against scrubs. They've been playing really good games. The Wolves are kind of disappointing opening up, I'll admit, in their first few games. That might have something to do with it. And then the Cavs just look amazing with Donovan Mitchell. I think having a Donovan Mitchell type player there, and Garland hasn't even come back yet. The Cavs just look really good. And I think with a player like Mitchell, they're going to take the next step and be in that upper echelon and East teams. I mean, the Cavs look closer to the Celtics than they do to the Nets. The Nets are different tier, lower tier to the other top teams. And I think the Cavs are up there in that upper echelon. They look really good.
I've got 2 responses to this. One, for the Jazz, absolutely did the assignment. That is a massive overreaction. And I think that they're going to go on a 12-game losing streak at some point.
Markkanen looks so good.
He does.
Look, holy shit.
They're not going to make the
play. The finished Jordan.
The team looks good. But it would be the opposite of a good choice. I don't even want to say a bad choice. It would be an atrocious choice for them to be good this year. All right, that's part 1. Part 2, you mentioned the Cavs being top 3 in the East, and you kind of noted that as a little bit of an overreaction. Some people may recall from our preview episodes that we did that I said I was pretty sure the Cavs were going to be a top 3 to 4 team in the East before the season started. And I don't think there was that much disagreement about that. So I don't know if necessarily I would call that one an overreaction, because not only has Donovan Mitchell looked good, Evan Mobley has not looked that good so far. And the Cavs are still winning games. But beyond that, Darius Garland hasn't taken the court yet.
Yeah.
Played 7 minutes or something.
Yeah, he has not been in these games. And the other night when they beat the Wizards in overtime, Darius Garland did not take the court the entire game. And the Wizards were neck and neck with them. But it was very clear that there was a talent disparity between those 2 teams when the Wizards got out rebounded on the offensive boards 16-4. And that was with Mobley not really having a particularly great night. the Cavs are going to be a fucking monstrous team. I don't know if they're going to finish in the top 3 in terms of like actual record, just because they've got so many young guys and young guys drop games when they shouldn't. But in terms of like going deep into the playoffs, I'm very high on this Cavs roster. I think that they're going to be incredible the entire year.
Yeah, I mean, I have one of mine is similar to that. I have like 2 teams that were kind of in the top half of their conferences, but like you can make the argument could be really good, could disappoint. Cavs are one, and then I had the Pelicans. Like I think they're legit. Granted, of course, they're already banged up. Like today, Herb Jones is missing, Zion's missing.
Brandon Ingram, I think, is missing.
Yeah, he's the third one.
Yeah,
concussion. But I mean, they look.
That's
good.
a random one.
Concussion?
Isn't it a concussion, or did I make?
No, that's just crazy. It's like basketball. I mean, I guess you get elbowed. There's a lot of ways to get it, but just I haven't seen a concussion.
Is it a concussion or a contusion?
It
might be a concussion. Look, I had picked him.
As concussion protocol.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's a concussion.
Yeah, he may have hit the ground. I mean, like you're playing on hardwood. You hit the ground hard. It makes sense to put you in concussion protocol. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton of analysis. Like, I just think they both look good. The Cavs, you guys kind of said it. I think most of us we were high on the Pelicans, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always like the uncertainty of like, Zion coming back. You don't know what they're going to look like, integrating such a big piece. And last year they were kind of like a fun, plucky 8 seed, but that doesn't necessarily always carry over year to year, like a fun, plucky 8 seed, then like taking the next step the year after.
Teams start scheming for you. Some guys regress. There starts to be problems about like who's getting the ball.
Yeah, and you're a little more of a target on teams' backs than before.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, like Alvarado, he's just going to continue getting steals in the backcourt, just doing what he does.
Yeah. I mean, I like the Pelicans prediction. I don't know if that's too much of an overreaction.
It's more so just like they were like, you can make arguments either way. Now I'm kind of just like, I think there's no argument to the downside of it aside from injuries.
Sure.
That's obviously the only thing.
Yeah. Injuries being the big one. And I mean, look, they are currently at this place based on the way that they're playing. They are going to outpace their win projections by probably a significant amount. So I guess it is an overreaction based on what Vegas thought they were going to be. But I mean, like game 1 of the season, we were like, Jesus Christ,
this team's good. Yeah.
How did they get so much talent? And they've got picks. They still have picks. Like they're like literally perfectly set up to run the league for the next 5 to 7 years.
And it's like the Celtics when they were in the Eastern Conference Finals and then also got the one pick the following year.
Yeah, I hate that.
Wembanyama and Zion could be on the same team, which is nuts.
Yeah, could happen. They have the Lakers pick, right? Yeah.
Because they have the Lakers.
Because the Lakers could be the worst team. All right, let me.
They're shooting. I was just listening today. The Lakers are so bad. They're like their offensive efficiency and their 3-point efficiency is the lowest that has been since like the early 90s, and like they're below everyone else in the league.
But they are the number 1 rated defensive team in the league right now.
Yeah.
And that's with them still missing a couple pieces that they expect to be playing. I'm not saying that it means
Draymond Green would fit perfectly on their team.
No, he would not.
I honestly don't think you would. No, you need shooters. I mean, what does Draymond Green do that Anthony Davis and LeBron
for their current Lakers team? I mean, it was a joke.
Sure. Fuck you. Here's my thing with the Lakers, and I was saying this on the podcast with Matt Moderno yesterday. Lakers, and I think I've said this in the group chat to you guys. Lakers literally make 2 extra shots in 2 of those games. Russell Westbrook takes 2 less shots, and somebody else gets the ball that shoots league average. If you give the ball to a league average shooter, they're 2-1. And that Warriors game for a lot of the way through was very even as well. So if Russell Westbrook, and I didn't really think he had that bad of a game 1, but down the stretch, a lot of guys looked pretty terrible. Like 2-1 would be ahead of where people projected the Lakers to be at this point. And I mean, I guess we'll get to my overreaction, which is be done with the experiment. It's not working. Be done with the Russell Westbrook experiment. Don't even try and trade him. If somebody wants to take,
cut him.
You can't. I don't think you're going to cut him because you owe him $47 million. And then he can
give him a John Wall and just send him home.
Send him home because he's not good for the locker room. I don't think this is good for his mental health. And that is something that we should think about. Like, what is this doing to the person? It's not good for the team. It's not good for roster cohesion. It's not good for the guys on the court, because as long as he's on this roster where he is coming to games, they are going to play him just because of how much money they owe him.
Yeah.
Because he's Russell Westbrook, and it's going to cause more issues than not. Send him home. Tell him to watch Thunder games the rest of the season. Maybe the Jazz or the Pacers, call you, and maybe their offer goes down and they don't require 2 firsts. But this isn't working, and he's lost them 2 games at this point out of 3.
Yeah,
straight up, he has lost them those games.
Do you think the Lakers would be better if they just didn't have Russ and didn't even get like another player for him? If he just didn't play, do you think they would be better?
They would be forced to play someone who is currently sitting on the bench getting 0 minutes a game, rather than a guy who's turning the ball over 5 times a game, shooting below 25%, shooting 8% from 3, and not impacting the game in a positive way, because he's not playing good. I mean, game 1, he played good defense. And I defended him after he played good defense. Game 2 and 3, he didn't. So what's the value that you're providing? It's a negative value. So replace him with literally a league average player. And the Lakers, they might not be 2-1, but I would say they at least would have won that Trailblazers game. And I think it's very, very likely that they would have won the Clippers game.
The Blazers for sure. I mean, he literally shot them out of that game. The direct impact he shot.
The 2-for-1 when you're up, like, what are you doing?
Yeah. There's so many bad moments you can point to in that game, even ignoring the efficiency, because if he shot what he did in that game and he hit a couple big shots, I'd be like, you know what, live by Russ, die by Russ. But this was exclusively die by Russ. Why are you taking more shots than almost anyone on the team, with the exception of LeBron James, when you are the worst shooter on the team?
Yeah.
You should not be doing this.
Yeah.
There's a limited number of possessions in every basketball game, and he used up about 1/4 of them.
And I feel like, because just you're hearing now too with the Lakers, like, it's like, all right, let's try to work it out. You'll be coming off the bench. He could do it, but it doesn't seem like he's buying into it either. And it really has been like just affecting everybody else.
And it's not like the bench unit has these shooters that, I mean, like LeBron and Russ have some similarities in their game in terms of what roster fits the best around them. Russ, much like LeBron, is best suited to having 4 shooters around him that he can drive and dish to. But the driving doesn't work anymore. His assists are more often than not just dump off passes at this point, or grenades at the end of a clock. Like, they're not genuine assists that are making the game easier for people. And he doesn't have shooters to get it to. So you're going to put him on the bench. And I've been a proponent for a while of having him play on the bench. I'm completely out on that idea until I see otherwise, because he doesn't fit with the bench either. He just holds the ball the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think mentally he's just in his own head. Like he's already a bad shooter who's like declining athletically. And now he's just like clearly in his own head and is like just so out of touch with reality about like what's going on.
He's got Simmonitis.
Knowing Kyrie Irving's injury history and Kevin Durant's injury history, would you trade what would it take for you to trade Ben Simmons for Russell Westbrook?
I mean, that I was thinking about like a Ben Simmons trade and like a potential either 3-team trade or like a possibility for, because I think my less fun like second overreaction is that Nash and Ben Simmons will be gone, because like the whole thing that KD bought in, there was like,
you think they'll be gone during this season?
Yeah, there were whispers that Kyrie also like may get a contract extension or reconsider a contract extension. So I could see just more games going by. I mean, Zach Lowe talked about it a bit, like if they get to like 500 with 40 games played, like what's going to happen? What's going to change? You're bought in. And yeah, Ben Simmons has played 3 games. He's fouled out in 2. He has 17 points and 14 fouls this year. Like he just doesn't do anything on offense. I mean, I don't know if I would trade him for Russ, but
sign the 3 of us. Have each one of us play about 14 minutes a game.
I mean,
and we will give you more.
If Russ plays aggressively, he could be a good fit on this Nets compared to Ben Simmons. And that's like just because he drives and does take shots, and because like his dump offs, I think, will create more space because he'll at least try to drive first. Ben Simmons doesn't even try to drive and dump it off. He's just a useless like piece of space out there.
Here's what I'll
but
say.
I don't know if it would really make the Nets any better.
If
it's
there's
frustrating to
one
watch.
player not named Steph Curry, who I think is probably the most versatile player to play next to in the NBA right now. If there's one player, and this is very ironic considering where they started their careers, that Russell Westbrook might be able to reclaim the Magic next to, it's Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
Because Kevin Durant can do all of the stuff that Russ cannot do. And when Russ does what Russ does, Durant is one of the few people that can bail him out and put points on the board with 3 seconds left in the shot clock.
Yeah. And that's exactly like,
I would not wish that on Kevin Durant, despite my issues with him. But I'm saying if you had to pick someone to do it, it would be Kevin Durant.
But at least, I mean, the thing with Ben Simmons is he just doesn't create any offense. He's just kind of like stands there and doesn't really cut or impact.
Crosses the half court, passes the ball off, goes to the corner, doesn't shoot threes. So what's he doing?
And he could, if he just drove, I think it really is the hesitation of not wanting to go to the line, which is insane. Even if you get N1 opportunities, you're still putting the bucket in, like putting the ball in the bucket, which I think he can do and is very capable of. But yeah, he just doesn't take shot attempts. And I think it's impacting the Nets. I think if it continues to go this way, which they're definitely going to be 1-3 tomorrow, I don't see them beating the Bucks.
They're not significant underdogs. I mean, Middleton is still out. It's like that's a big consideration. Their number 2 scorer is still out.
Katie and Kyrie have now had back-to-back like very good games. They just can't stop anybody on defense, so they need that third person. In their one win, it was Claxton that did it for them. But I think and their defense is just terrible right now. John Morant and Bane put up 38
Desmond
points
Bane
each.
went to fucking town.
And they just got wide open threes. I mean, they were just switching up top and it didn't look like they were being aggressive at all and just taking their time and just shooting up. That John Morant alley-oop that he had was freaking sick. He looked literally
where
he
literally went horizontal in midair.
Yeah, like he looked like Superman when he got that thing. It was ridiculous.
I think John Morant might be a better jumper than Derrick Rose. And I used to think Derrick Rose was the best high-flying guard we'd ever seen.
Ja's a lot of fun to watch.
He's electric.
Because Derrick Rose was a lot of straight up and down, and it was like when he was unleashed, he was incredible to watch.
And it was like violent.
Ja will go up and find the ball wherever it is, and he will sail it into the hoop. Like he does weird shit to accomplish.
He's like Bruce Lee, like be like water. Like he literally changes his body.
He's incredible. I'm so worried about his lower body.
I know.
Every single time, even when he lands perfectly, I'm like, this ain't it. Don't do it.
So much stress on his
layups, buddy.
Ligaments. Yeah.
Oh, John Morant, incredible talent.
But I guess just to not make a take related to the Nets at all.
Sure.
I could see either the Rockets or the Spurs being a lottery team in the West as well.
A lottery team?
Or not lottery team, sorry.
A playoff team?
Playing team.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean who's not making it then? Because if the Jazz are the 3 seed and if the Rockets and the Spurs are in the play-in, who are the other teams? Like who's missing it? Basically,
I haven't done the math yet, but I'm gonna predict a major injury. No, that's terrible. I don't want to put that on anybody.
15 teams, right?
Because the Blazers look really good too. That's the thing, which I wasn't really high on to start, but they're really good.
We're gonna talk about them a little bit later.
But like
15 teams in the West. Thunder, we can already discount them.
Yeah.
Lakers, let's just say they're out. Who else? We just need 3 more to get these guys to be playing. Kings. That's okay. 2 more.
All right, I'm gonna say disappointing year for the Timberwolves. Let's just put the Wolves there.
Timberwolves out of the play-in, so they're not even a top 10 seed with 3 All-NBA talents.
I guess there's certain like rules that you have to live by in life, where it's just like like maybe the Detroit Lions will be good this year, and then every year they suck. Like maybe the Wolves are just gonna suck again and disappoint us.
Would the Timberwolves missing the play-in this year be more disappointing than last year's Lakers team?
No.
Yeah.
ESPN
I guess last
3
year the
guys
Lakers
on that
were
roster as top 25 players.
Yeah, but I mean, last year the Lakers were also like, I don't think anyone expects the Wolves to win the title. Last year the Lakers were title favorites.
That's true. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Fair.
I mean, like LeBron James and Anthony Davis, Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah. Anthony Edwards.
I mean, I do like, but he's eating too much Popeyes.
Yeah, I don't even want to talk about that. And Karl Anthony Towns got lean like 6 months ago, and he's already up his own ass about this shit.
Yeah, and like maybe show a little toughness in your on-court career before you're talking about, like, before you give
And maybe
advice
just
to
don't
someone.
talk about what you don't like about your teammates' off-court actions 4 days into the season.
Or to the media. Tell the
Yeah,
teammate.
talk to him about it in the locker room if you want him to change his diet. Guess what? He'll probably be receptive to it.
And
But
also
talking
like,
about him in the media, like, come on, dude, are you
yeah, it's
A-Rod?
lame.
What are we doing?
And also, like, he's 21 years old. If he can afford Popeyes when he's 21. If he's doing that when he's like 28, then it's a little bit
Look
of a
at
different story.
what LeBron was doing at that age. Look at what Dwayne Wade was doing at that age. Look at what Kobe was doing at that age. Like,
exactly.
You can get away with it at that age. And honestly, to a certain degree, you're a kid. You should be allowed to be. Like, you're allowed to have fun. You don't need to be on chicken, rice, and broccoli diets every day of your life.
When do that when you're older and your body doesn't quite keep up like you used.
When you're at your 30 like years, like
when
us,
you're
and we need to actually take care of your body. Yeah.
30-year-old who can barely even live in this world anymore.
While I'm queuing up my Chipotle order.
Sure.
I like it.
Modai, any other overreactions from you?
Well, I just gotta say, all this Ben Simmons talk, I was getting aroused during it about talking about how bad Ben Simmons
Gotta cut that out of the
tape. It's like no one had ever watched Ben Simmons play basketball before. Like, oh, he's like
he was an all NBA player.
Yeah, but like he's not shooting, he's not driving, he's scared to get fouled. I mean, that was at the beginning of his career, Ben Simmons was doing stuff they stopped doing later in his career, and everyone was like, well, Sixers, whatever. That would be
that was the argument, is that this was because of the environment that Embiid and Doc and the Sixers media and the Sixers fans propagated for Ben Simmons. So when he was going to go to a much quieter fan base and one where he has all this support, maybe he will be able to get over the yips. But it clearly seems to be the yips, because I don't think this is a talent issue. I think this is a mentality. It went from
because at least he was attempting the shot, 12 shot attempts. Like, he's only attempting 4 shot attempts, and sometimes his first playing nearly the whole game.
3 years in the league, he just didn't attempt threes, and we all said shoot three.
And he attempted 1 3 last game.
Right.
There you go.
But I mean, he would take mid-range shots. He would try and finish through contact. He was better at the line when he came into the league than he is now. So there's clearly some underlying factor in his brain. I think it is athletes don't want to hear it. It's the yips. It is the yips.
Yeah. I think he was just he had been the best player his entire life. He never needed to work on stuff that he was deficient at. You see this a lot where players that are so athletically gifted come into the league and can't shoot. Like LeBron couldn't shoot when he was so athletic. He didn't need to. Like,
Giannis couldn't shoot.
Exactly. I mean, wait, you say Giannis?
Yeah.
I mean, he's better at the line, but he still can't shoot. He's got
a nice.
He hits daggers though. He still hits daggers from 3.
He's better for sure. But
what he had when he came into the league, and I mean, part of it was probably also that his body was
so
he literally could not compete, and he was not ready for that type of body.
Yeah,
but it was ugly when he came in, when he was averaging 8 points a game.
Significantly better, and that's my point. Is when you're that dominant athletically, you don't need to shoot until you play in the NBA, and people can. I mean, Giannis is a league of his own. But
Blake Griffin, another good one. Blake Griffin came in and he learned how to shoot because
for Detroit, he had a really good 3-point shot.
And even towards the end of his Clippers tenure, he learned how to distribute the ball. He learned how, I don't know if you guys remember his early Clippers tenure with how he dribbled versus the ball handler he became.
Like Stanley from The Office.
Yeah, just so bad. And then he became a guy who was going through the legs. He was nutmegging people.
Yeah,
he had spin moves. He had a post game where it was all footwork based. Obviously Blake Griffin and Ben Simmons are very different people, but we've seen this before from these superb athletes that don't have NBA skills. What's wrong with Ben Simmons?
Yeah, and that's all the profiles done on him when he was in Philly, that he just surrounds himself with people that don't push him, that just prop up his ego. So he never felt like he needed to get better. And he brushed off the idea that he should improve as a shooter. He was so defiant and stubborn that he didn't need to shoot. And talking about the environment, Embiid, yes, because Embiid basically publicly bullied him to shoot. Even before things went south.
I feel like Embiid also defended him for a long time.
No, he did, but he was very, very aggressive to the media. We want him to shoot. We want him to shoot. And I mean, Doc, he was basically feeding Ben Simmons grape by tickling his feet his whole first year with the Sixers, talking about he's a great point guard. He doesn't need to shoot, blah, blah, blah. And then at the end of the Hawks series, he gets asked like, "Oh, do you think he's a championship point guard?" And he said, "I don't know." And then everybody blew that out of proportion, like he threw him under the bus. Like I thought that was so overblown because he got so much support.
Yeah,
like all 4 years, 5 years, whatever it was in Philly, and then he just like, I mean, he just, I don't know what happened.
Did he even say I don't know, or I don't have an answer to that yet?
He said I don't know. He said I don't know.
Okay.
His exact, and then like his exact quote was I don't know. But the whole year he had been defending him, and Simmons just didn't improve. And like what you're seeing now is just what he was at the end of his tenure in Philly.
It's 100% the yips. Yeah, like he drives and shoots with his right hand, and like he doesn't even look bad when he drives and tries to put up a floater. Like at least doing that is a more high percentage shot than just literally standing and just because when you're not even when you know what the action is too, like if he instead of handing the ball off, turned around and drove at least on half of those pick and rolls, you give them that little hesitation to create a free shot and create some offense. I mean, he's good at swinging the ball. He does make some good passes. Maybe there should be more set plays by Steve Nash to get people involved in cutting off screens. I think that would help. But I mean, yeah, he's just such a net negative on offense, and just his lack of willingness to drive. Yeah, and
it's fear of failure. Like
it's
and I think it's literally just to go to the line. He just doesn't want to go to the line, and that's why he doesn't want to drive. Like he gets so close. There was one play where he could have easily dunked it, and he like passed to a cutting Nick Claxton to like lay it up. But it's like he had the angle to just put the ball in, and he instead just like passed it to Claxton.
It's so rare that we see the yips in such a visible way in the NBA. Like you see it in baseball, particularly with pitchers, because so much of it is like a set motion. It's gearing up. Everyone's paying attention to everything you're doing. And so if you get in your head a little bit and you break your motion, you're done. Same thing with hitters. You know, if you get in your head and you break your motion a little bit, you know, look at Cody Bellinger right now. And part of that is shoulder injuries and back injuries. But he went from being an MVP talent to being the worst offensive player on the Dodgers because he broke his swing.
It was like Matt Harvey with the Mets. If you remember him.
Yeah.
The Dark Knight.
And then you see it in football, particularly from quarterbacks, because they start seeing ghosts and they have taken too many hits, and then they lose all of their like pocket sensibility. Basketball, though, you rarely see it. Like, it's.
I feel like
I remember the story about like, and it's not a true story, but there's the story about the Michael Jordan Muggsy Bogues moment where he says, "Shoot, you fucking midget," and then apparently Muggsy Bogues' averages fell off after that. They didn't. It's not a true story. Like literally, the one story that everybody tells.
Markelle
Fultz was. They ended up finding out that it was like a legitimate injury, though, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
thoracic outlet syndrome. Yeah.
I think that's BS.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I don't know enough about it, but from what I've heard, it's just such a rare injury for basketball players that basically
it's so rare that no one's ever heard of it.
It happens a lot to baseball.
That's what happened to Matt Harvey. That was actually what happened to.
Yeah, it is a baseball injury. It's not a basketball injury, which is why I think they misdiagnosed it for a while. But yeah, Markelle Fultz. It is kind of weird that this happened, you know, in back-to-back years in Philadelphia. Neither here nor there.
Yeah, I think to answer like the yips thing, I feel like because baseball, like pitching and hitting, is so precise. Like if one set of whatever you're doing is off by like a millimeter or like a second late or second early, especially for pitching, it throws off everything. I feel like with basketball, it's such like I don't know, you're like not going through the motions, but like I guess shooting is pretty.
It's unconscious. Everything that you're doing in basketball is an unconscious moment. You're not.
And it's very
about
flowy.
Everything. Yeah,
was the word I was trying to think of. It's like very flowy, not as much as it is like with baseball. So it is. Yeah, it is rare, but
yeah,
just get someone on the Sixers and they will forget how to shoot.
All right, I've got one more. I've actually got two more overreactions. One of them, the more I think about it, I'm not sure if it's an overreaction. I'll give you that one first. Because the next one is going to talk about one of our teams. One of my overreactions and it's kind of a question: is Anthony Simons a better running mate for Damian Lillard than CJ McCollum ever was? And I don't think that we have the data yet to really support it because it's been very brief time that they've been running mates together. But I saw this one on Twitter a lot yesterday that it was like Simons over CJ, and I think CJ is a better player. But I think Simons might be able to unlock more of Dame, just where they are in their careers. I think CJ being as undersized as he was, it was the wrong pairing of two really, really good players.
Well, they just couldn't beat the Warriors either. I think when you look at when Dame and CJ's prime was, when they were at the best, and then when the Blazers were the best, they could never get out of the second round because the West was that stacked. Like they were really, really good, but they just had to go up against like the all-time Warriors, which weren't going to get beat. And I don't think they were going to get beat by anybody at that time. But I mean, they were both such dynamic scorers. Like so many games in the fourth quarter, it's Dame and CJ going back when they would close it out. Yeah, the Rockets during that time too.
The Rockets, I think, are the only team that I would have bet money on to beat the Warriors, and by all metrics,
Paul doesn't pull his hamstring.
Well, then Morey at the time
they don't go 0 for 27. They beat the Warriors.
He was saying like Morey tweeted like, "Hey, we're like 4-5 against the Warriors the past 2 years, and everyone else is like defeated. They don't have one win against the Warriors in the playoffs." So like, I mean, yeah, but again, just at that time, I mean, we'll see. Like we'll see how the season plays out, and how the Blazers do, obviously. But I think for now, I mean, CJ and Dame were just so good next to each other. It's just an unfortunate, like, Stockton and Malone were great too, but they didn't get any rings.
I feel like also
they ran up against Michael Jordan, a few times. But sure, I get what you mean.
Offensively, they were great. To me, it was always defensively. They were just two undersized guards like that, couldn't hang. And that's why I thought
you meant Stockton and Malone for a second, and I was I don't know if I'd describe Malone as undersized,
the man.
Doesn't deliver on Sundays.
Or against Jordan, apparently.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, like CJ McCollum is so talented offensively. He just is not good on defense. And I don't think Simmons, to my knowledge, is not a plus defender at this point in his career. Granted, like nobody really is when they're that young. So we'll see. Yeah. We just need to see it for longer for Simmons, because he's always had the talent. He's just never been able to put it together consistently. Until the end of last year when Dame wasn't there. So when he was able to run the show. So we're not really sure what it's going to look like as a running mate, but no, I mean, a better running mate, I would say probably not. Could they could they be as good? I don't know if the Blazers will ever be as good as a team as they were those prime years, but maybe like those two specifically could be as good, but I don't think it'll ever be better.
CJ and Dame always reminded me a little bit of Wall and Beal, where it was a lot of my turn, your turn basketball. And it was like, if you guys could just unlock, and I mean, obviously there's issues with their games where they kind of are redundant in certain areas, kind of like Wall and Beal were, although Wall and Beal should have been better at it, because I mean, the perfect guard to put next to Beal is a guy like John Wall.
Yeah.
But it was, who's the alpha, who's the 1A, who's the 1B, who's getting the ball in late game situations. Wall and Beal never really figured it out. And I think there was a brief run there where Dame and CJ figured it out. And then everyone started cluing in on how bad they were defensively. And Nurkic couldn't make up for it. And the rest of their supporting cast couldn't make up for it, because honestly, the rest of that team wasn't very good defensively either. And they just started getting punished. And it kind of all fell apart.
Yeah, we'll wait to see. I saw a comment where it's like Dame did pass Simmons the ball to like hit the shot to go up, and like they do have a good dynamic. But I mean, they're making a big deal about Dame deferring to someone when that wasn't a thing when it was him and CJ. It was literally whoever was hot that night was the one that was just going to get the ISO. Like they both just had amazing just dribble moves out the bag. It was so much fun to watch them go one-on-one and then be really good at it to close games out. Unlike watching, KD and Kyrie, because it's just a brick, and then the other team is a really good organized play where they get a bucket, and then it's just bullshit ISOs. But
I mean, it's shades of those prime OKC Thunder days. I mean, when it works excellently, and when it doesn't work, it's not great.
But the Blazers are really good this year, so
they are 4-0. I do have one more overreaction. Then there's a couple teams I want to rattle off real quick just to get your guys' thoughts on them. This one is specifically for Modai, and it's kind of a question, and it is very much an overreaction considering the past few years that he's had. No, Doc Rivers, there's no such thing as an overreaction to Doc Rivers unless somebody says he's the coach of the year.
Yeah, we know what Doc Rivers is.
Yeah. Are Joel Embiid's best days behind him?
Will he ever be as good as he was the past 2 years? Probably not. I will say Embiid always starts the year slow. It's like if you look at how he starts years. Last year he started slow. Last year they said it was because of like the first game of the year he banged knees with Valanciunas, so he said he was kind of working through some knee trouble. 2 years ago, I don't necessarily remember that was like the COVID year. The season started in December.
I wouldn't take anything of that year as like a stat to pay attention to. It's such a weird year.
But I mean, it's a weird thing. Like to play body language doctor, he looks just like unhappy. It looks like he
disengaged.
It's like the Al Horford year is the most unhappy I've ever seen Embiid. He's like, and this is also what he looks like. And I don't know if like he's pissed that they built the team around Harden. I think that would be really stupid if that was the reason. I don't know if maybe he's like mentally trying to grapple with taking it easy during the regular season to be healthy for the playoffs. And he like mentally doesn't understand like how to go about doing that, if that makes sense. Like all off season, he talked about wanting to be healthy for the playoffs. So I wonder if part of him's like, well, like how many minutes should I be playing? How hard should I be going? Stuff like that. Like he's just unsure of what he should be doing, or he's just playing like he's just playing bad. I don't know, because it's more than just missing shots that he normally would make. It's like turning the ball over. It's like looking disengaged, especially on defense, which is the biggest concern because he's been one of the best defensive centers, like outside of Rudy Gobert, probably one of the best defensive centers who can actually stay on the court offensively. And he was horrible against the Celtics, just horrible, just got taken advantage of.
Yeah, and against the Spurs when he got out bullied by Poeltl, whatever it was. Yeah, it's like everyone's like, wow. And yeah, I think he knows how talented he is and how easy the game could be for him. And maybe I think he's just also just going through the motions, like you were mentioning before. It does kind of look like those mistakes are really just mental errors because physically and skill wise, I mean, he's still there and he makes everything look easy when he's engaged.
Yeah, and Embiid's always been kind of a front runner when like things are going well. He's airplaning against the Raptors and when they're up 2-1 in the series, and he's always been kind of one to pout and make excuses when things don't go well, which I'm kind of done with at this point. Like you're old enough where you shouldn't necessarily be doing that. And Embiid has always been one where if he can physically take advantage of someone, which I'm going to phrase that differently. If someone can't match his size, then he'll just dominate. He'll just dominate. Like like he's always been able to do that. If a team has an undersized center, he will just push them under the basket and he'll get an easy bucket every single time. But if you have an Al Horford,
is why that Sixers team acquired Al Horford, because they did not want him to be on the Celtics anymore because of how his game was making Embiid's game so much more difficult when they matched up. Yeah. And it just absolutely did not work. I don't know if there were locker room issues or if it was.
Well, that team was horribly constructed. It was Embiid, Al Horford, Jason Richardson, Ben Simmons, and Tobias Harris.
Did you have Tobias Harris? Yeah.
It was nobody in that.
Simmons on the team.
Which is crazy because there's so much talent in those names that you just said, but the actual roster makeup doesn't make sense.
Nobody could shoot.
And I still feel that way about Tobias Harris. I think Tobias Harris would thrive on 28 teams in the league, and the Sixers are one of the couple that he would not.
He would thrive on on a 40-win team. Like he is just not contribute to winning basketball. He contributes to stats, but not winning.
I mean, I think there's probably there's a lot of teams with good distributors that I think would make Tobias Harris's life really easy, and he'd go back to being like a 22 point per game guy. I think he could win with certain teams. The Sixers, because I mean, I guess Harden can be that, but Harden is also looking for his own shot. He's also very clearly looking for Embiid's shot. Like, I think Tobias Harris is kind of low down on his pecking order in terms of who he's trying to get going in these games.
Yeah, like to me, it's no surprise that when Tobias Harris has been good, it's been for the Magic, it's been for the Bucks before they got Giannis, it's been and then the Pistons and then the Clippers. Like all those teams are horrible. And like the one Clippers year which was good was the post Blake Griffin, Chris Paul, and the pre Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. So like,
during that year where it was like a bunch of bench pieces and people thought they weren't going to achieve anything. And then Doc Rivers showed that with a roster like that, he is a good coach.
That's what's so frustrating to me is how stubborn he is and how like the starters played 40 minutes against the Spurs on Saturday. Like, I don't care if you're losing the whole game. There's no scenario in which your starters should play 40 minutes in a regular season game.
Particularly 4 games into the season.
Exactly.
All you're doing is risking injury to a guy who's not properly ready to go at that point.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like it's coaching malpractice, and that's the biggest frustration. He won't go deep in the bench. He won't experiment and try different things. Like it's no surprise that the year the Bucks won was when they took a step back in the regular season because, okay, maybe we should try playing a different style of defense. Maybe we should try experimenting things. And the reason why the Bucks were so good that year is because they played so many different styles. Like against the Nets, they played one way. Against the Hawks, it was like in their defense just were able to adjust to the opponent in such a good way, which just propelled them the whole year.
All right. So we'll say jury's still out on Joel Embiid. Maybe his best days are behind him. Also could just be early season, the way it goes for Embiid. Obviously we're 4 games in for the Sixers. It is an overreaction to say his best days are behind him, considering he just got second place in MVP voting. We can revisit this question, 20 or 30 games into the season. We'll see where it goes from there. Next up, I've got a few teams. I've actually got 6 teams that I want to rattle off to you guys really quickly. I'm going to rattle their records off, and then I want to talk about them a little bit. I just want to hear, whether you think that they're going to continue on their current trend lines, or if, the season's going to turn around, or, either they're doing really well or they're doing really poorly. We've got the Portland Trailblazers, who we've already talked about, at 4-0. We've got the San Antonio Spurs at 3-1. We've got the Utah Jazz that Ferentinos very much believes in, also at 3-1. On the other side of things, we've got the Philadelphia 76ers at 1-3, the Los Angeles Lakers at 0-3, and the Brooklyn Nets at 1-2. So all 3 of our teams, and I didn't pick these 3 teams because there are 3 teams. I picked them because the talent is there to be better teams than they are. So this was not my attempt at bullying the 3 of us. But 6 teams right there, 2 teams that we all thought were going to be 2 of the worst tanking teams in history. The Trailblazers, who could have gone either way with it, currently undefeated. And then 3 teams that should be playoff contenders, 2 of whom were, 2 of the actual favorites to win the championship this year, who have won shared between them in 9 games, 2 games. They've won 2 games out of 9. What's going on here? Are these teams going to continue on this path, or are they going to figure it out?
I think the Sixers are going to figure it out, and then I think the Lakers and Nets are in trouble unless there's a trade or something changes to their roster. I think when the Nets get TJ Warren and Seth Curry back, and Joe Harris continues to work in the lineup, I could see them playing better, but I think they really need a trade for a center. They are getting killed on the boards, and the best teams in the East are really good on the boards and have dominant centers. I just think the Sixers are going to figure it out. Harden is looking really good this year. They're just going to bounce back, I think. And out of all of the teams left, they have probably the deepest roster, at least out of the Nets and the Lakers, they have the deepest roster. But yeah, just the Lakers, how they're built, we talked about them enough. I just think they need a trade or something to change their roster up. But on the other side, I do like the trajectory of all those teams. I mean, the Blazers are going to do good. Obviously, you heard my Jazz take. I think they're going to keep rolling up the wins. But I mean, these are overreactions early in the season. Anything can happen, as next week when we look at the games after another week of League Pass, could be like, oh, okay, actually, we should have calmed down on some of these takes. The Jazz just lost 4 straight games.
Yeah.
No, but
The Spurs looking really nice, but I could very easily see them being, 3
Kevin Johnson,
after
Darren
the next 2 games.
Vassell, the shooting guard was looking good. I mean, I was watching the end of that at the 3rd quarter. I was tuning into the Spurs and Sixers game, and it just seemed like the Spurs were getting up, getting an open 3, and were burying it, playing good team basketball. And as bad as they have been lately, and we'll see just how good Murray is with Atlanta and how Atlanta does this year. It's just surprising as a Popovich-led team, but for that same reason, that's why I think they could surprise us and actually, overperform expectations this year and play well.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think either the Jazz or the Spurs are going to win 30 games. I feel like it's easy to get enamored what happens at the beginning of the year.
Never forget 27 left for the Jazz.
Never forget the 13-7 Wizards.
Never forget the 3-0 process Sixers who beat the LeBron James Miami Heat in 2012. They started. You should have seen what people in Philly were saying about the 3-0 Sixers. Oh my God! Well, we know this team will be in the playoffs.
Honestly, Modi, considering how active I was on Twitter at that point, I probably did see what they were saying about that team, and I probably blocked that in my memory.
Yeah, the Wizards started hot last year. The Pelicans started 1-14 last year.
Yeah, and then made it basically back to 500.
Yeah. So I get it. It's the same thing in the NFL. You remember what happens in week 1 more than you remember what happens in weeks 2 through 18. But I mean, the Jazz they're just so devoid of talent, and neither of those organizations want to win. So even if they're like 5 games, 10 games below 500 at the trade deadline, they're both going to sell. They're both going to sell.
Sure.
But the Blazers, I mean, I think it depends what we consider like keep it going. Like I don't think they're going to go 82-0. I'm not going to make that proclamation.
for the Blazers, I think they had the regular season win losses at like 39 and a half.
At the big, you mean preseason?
Preseason.
It was either 39 or 40 and a half. It was
okay.
Right.
So let's say they end up, 5 games over that. Let's say they're a 44 win team. Are they going? Do you think they're going to be a 44 win team? They've already got 4 out of the way. They just need 40 more.
That's true. I'm still going to say no. I think that we haven't seen the best of the West play up to their standard yet.
Sure.
Meaning the Nuggets, meaning the Clippers, meaning the Warriors. I mean, like even the Suns, like they came back against the Mavs.
Suns, yeah, they look really good.
Pretty impressive win. The Grizzlies are obviously 3-1. But so yeah, I mean, of the 3 teams, I definitely think that the Blazers have the highest chance of surprising us. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the other side, I kind of agree on the Sixers. As much as we like to rag on Doc Rivers, he's had enough track records of being good enough in the regular season. Granted, he's been blessed with incredibly talented teams, but they've always won. Like he's never had a really disappointing regular season that I can recall off the top of my head.
No, he's one of the best regular season coaches because he leans on stars so heavily.
Exactly. It's like Thibodeau. It's like same thing with
It's like Thibodeau. Yeah. If you use your best players all the time, you are going to win a lot of regular season games, but your guys are going to be gassed out by the time the playoffs get there.
Yeah. And if you play the same style over and over again, eventually you'll beat teams in the regular season that you probably shouldn't. Sure. But in the playoffs, when you need to play different, like that's the whole thing with him. So I think
he can't adjust.
Exactly. So I think they'll be fine. Like I don't think they're going to in danger of being a play-in team. Could they finish out like 5 or 6? Like that wouldn't surprise me at all. Sure. I also think the Nets are going to be fine. Like I love ragging on Ben Simmons, but he's also 4 games into missing like 18 months of basketball or something. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I do think Steve Nash has probably got to go, not because he's a horrible coach, but just because
he's not a coach.
Yeah. But I wonder how much of him not being a coach is because of KD and Kyrie.
Sure. Well, that's my perspective on it. Is I think Steve Nash would be really good, particularly with a young team, particularly a fast team. I just don't think the Brooklyn Nets situation makes sense, and I think it was their personal choice rather than their professional choice.
Yeah,
I'd much rather see him, maybe with like the Kings or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah,
I agree with you there. The Wizards, the Lakers. I just don't see it. Even like I get the argument where like 2 shots go differently and they're 2-1. I feel like you could say that about literally every game that's within 5 points of the final score. Mm-hmm. Like the Sixers looked horrible against the Bucks. If Wesley Matthews misses that 3 at the end, the Sixers win. Right. I don't necessarily think that makes me feel any better about them. And I just think like offensively, even with Russ just pretending he doesn't exist and you don't upgrade that position, there's just still not enough shooting there. Sure. And LeBron and AD feel great at the beginning of the season, but talk to me in like February and March.
Yeah. Once they actually have some wear and tear on those legs, considering this is LeBron's longest offseason in quite some time. So once he's 20, 30, 40 games into the season, that might be very different. I'm largely aligned with, I think, where you are. I do think the Blazers are going to fall back to earth. I still have them. I think I actually had them as an over on our preseason predictions.
Yeah.
And then after the fact, I was like, I just don't feel good about this one. I don't think they're going to be a very good team. So in terms of where I actually think they're going to be, I think they're going to be like a low-end play-in team at best.
Yeah.
I honestly would not be crazy surprised if the Spurs put together 35 wins. I don't think they should. I don't think they necessarily want to, but I also think we're reaching the end of Pop's tenure as the coach of the Spurs, and he might want to try and go out on a good note. And there's a lot of quiet talent, like unknown talent on this team that he might be able to unlock. They're not going to be, right now they've got a 750 win percentage. They're not going to stay there. That's ridiculous. But the Spurs might be better than we thought they'd be. This might not end up being the tanking race that we thought it was going to be. The Jazz, I think, are probably going to go back to being bad. The Sixers will figure it out. The Lakers, ask me again in 3 weeks once we figure this Russell Westbrook stuff out. But They're not going to lose every game. They can't.
They,
I hope they don't lose every game.
they won't go 0-82. I will agree with you there.
And I think I'm going to disagree with you on the Nets. I think the Nets might be average. I mean, like they've played less games than everybody else I mentioned. They've only played 3 games. They might be 2-2 by the end of either today or tomorrow. I think the Nets are going to be highly average. So they're not going to be bad. They're not going to be good. I don't think they're a contender.
No,
I think I took the over on them as well, and their over was pretty high. I think they're going to be below that. So we'll see with them. Let's hit one more thing and then let's get out of here. There's actually basketball on that I would like to go watch, and I think Fiorentino's Chipotle may have arrived.
Yeah.
Yep. I figured
have
that's
some issues with the order. Yeah.
no, you're good. You're good. No problem at all. I put together a couple Game Pass teams of the week. Did you guys have any teams that you were specifically looking at, or
I just chose the like League Pass team of the week. Essentially, I chose one.
Okay. Yeah. Go for it.
I don't know. I mean, it's a team we talked about, the Cavs.
Okay.
They play the Magic, which whatever Magic haven't won yet. Nothing to see there. But then they play the Celtics and the Knicks. The Knicks team we haven't talked about yet. Surprisingly fine start to the year.
Yeah.
Granted, like
still unexciting to me though.
Of course, unexciting. But like, I mean, net rating is just like a laughable stat to look at this early in the year. But I love looking at it just to see 4th in net rating.
Yeah.
Behind the Mavs, Cavs, and Bucks. Not that I think the Knicks are going to be good, but beginning of the year before Tibbs wears out of starters, maybe they'll be good. So I'm interested.
And he's got more young guys than usual.
Yeah.
He might not be able to wear him down. Maybe next year's the year he wears them down and gets rid of all their like meniscuses.
Yeah. He just Jimmy Butler's all of them.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. That's it. That's a good one.
Cavs for me.
Fiorentino's, any on your end? Anybody that you're
going to go with the Jazz?
To watch?
Everyone should check out the Jazz and get the hype. They have the Rockets tomorrow night, which the Rockets are a fun team that have a lot of young players too. Jalen Green had a really nice game the other night. I think he put up 38 points. So I can watch the Rockets tomorrow with the Jazz, and then coming up this weekend, the Jazz got the Nuggets, which just watching Jokic, Nuggets are always a good team too. Jazz Nuggets, 2 very similar teams in the West. They usually finish like top 4 and then get bounced in the second round of the playoffs.
Those white,
and they have like similar
teams.
rosters. I feel like Mike Conley is playing for both those teams, and he's always playing for both those teams.
Yeah. He's 40-year career. Conley's always been on both teams. He was there when they were expansion teams.
Yeah.
Kind of on the other side of that one, you mentioned that they're playing the Jazz this week. I've got the Rockets, and they're playing the Jazz, the Blazers, the Suns, and the Clippers, all of whom have been good teams so far this season. Now, I don't think the Rockets are necessarily going to win even half those games. I think they might go 1-3, but they're a young, fun, fast team. I think they're going to have fun games. Honestly, the most fun game of those might be the one with the Jazz, where it's 2 quote unquote bad teams. And then the other one I've got is another team that we just talked about a little bit ago, the Spurs. They've got the Timberwolves twice. They've got the Bulls and they've got the Raptors. All of those teams are supposed to be playoff teams. I'd really like to see where the Spurs are at the end of that run once they get through these next 4 games. Right now they're 3-1, very, very reasonable that they could be 3-5 after those 4 games. But I think they're going to play I think that they're at least going to take one off the Wolves. I think they're going to play them hard.
Did they just beat the Wolves?
Yeah, yesterday? They play them a ton to start the season.
They play the Wolves 3 times in the first, in an 8-day span, they played them 3 times.
And they beat the Wolves in one of those games.
Yeah, they smashed them. I mean, they won by 9.
Because I remember before the season going and talking to Jared Jensen, my buddy, and saying, look, you guys are going to be like 9-1 to start the season and chalking up all 3 Spurs games as wins for the Wolves. I can't do that anymore because they already lost one of them.
Yeah, I mean, just a gross offensive team to start the year. Just can't score.
Yeah. But, the Spurs are exciting. They're well coached. They've got fun matchups, and they're playing hard defense, which will win you a lot of regular season games. So Rockets and Spurs, those are my 2 Game Pass teams of the week, or League Pass teams of the week, excuse me. Game Pass is on Xbox.
It's also NFL.
Is it NFL? Okay.
It's Game Pass, yeah.
Yeah, I don't watch that much football, so I would.
No, it's like the subscription, whatever.
Sure. Okay, yeah. Let's get out of here. Let's go watch some basketball. Let's go live our lives. Fiorentino's on the East Coast. Pistons Wizards. I'm about to go watch that. It's going to be a lot of basketball for me today. If you're still watching, appreciate you being here. Make sure you click that like button if you have not done so already. And let me be honest. If you are watching and you've gotten to this point and you have not clicked the like button yet, reevaluate how you treat YouTube videos. Click the like button immediately when you start watching something that you know you're going to enjoy, and you know you're going to enjoy the Give and Go Show. If you have not done so already, click the subscribe button for the exact same reasons I just gave for the like button. And if you've got any takes on the season so far or anything that you want us to talk about on future episodes, make sure you comment below. Sometime in the next couple of weeks, all of these directives are not going to make a ton of sense because I'm going to convert all of these to audio and get us up on Anchor so that people can listen to the audio version of this podcast. So anything that I say about YouTube, you can ignore it. If you are watching us on an audio or listening to us, on an audio platform, click the follow button. Make sure you give us 5 stars, share us with your friends, all the stuff that you know because you listen to podcasts. And this is being recorded on Tuesday. This will probably be out on Wednesday. We'll be back next week. Give and Go Show. That was a long spiel. I'm going to figure out how to cut that down, or I'm going to have Ferentinos or Modi do it next time.
Subscribe, like, do the good stuff, comment.
Yeah, smash that subscribe button.
Yeah.
Just absolutely, just break your mouse, break your phone screen, do whatever you got to do. We'll see you guys next time.